So in the world today, both sexes are attacked, right? Females are attacked, men are attacked. And so being a man, I mean, I can't say I've been like directly attacked for being a man, but just in general, like you see in the media, that manhood is attacked and certain things just aren't good anymore if you're a man. It's not good to be like the presiding person in your family, or that's looked down upon, or men and women are equal. Well, you know what? Like, they're equal in the eyes of God. Like, one's not better than the other, but we're not the same. Like, men and women are very much different, and it's good. And I think we need to celebrate those differences rather than try and like blur the line between men and women. And so if we look in the Bible for examples of Christian masculinity, I mean, you think of the story of David and Goliath, right? And we all know the story. David kills Goliath with a stone, right? And so it's like, oh, is David more manly or is Goliath more manly? David ends up doing a lot of good and writing a lot of holy scripture, but he ultimately falls to lust, and that's not healthy. Like, that's not a good masculine quality to have. In fact, I'd argue that's the opposite. I think, there's a lot of men out there who are like womanizers. It's portrayed cool if a man can get many women, and I don't think that's very masculine. I don't think that's manly or cool whatsoever. And if you hold Christian values to be true, I think you'd have to agree with that. So if I think of any other examples in the scripture, like Paul and Peter and Job, right? These men like gloried in their sufferings for God. Like, they were worthy to suffer shame on behalf of Christ, and they were able to bear their burdens with poise and grace in a way that is very admirable. And I think that's a quality of like modern masculinity that needs to be had, where we suffer. And I've talked previously about like, no, you don't have to suffer alone, but there needs to be a certain degree of like shifting your perspective and realizing that suffering for the right reasons can be a privilege, and that can turn you into a better man. I think there's the 3 P's of being a man, which are: you are called to provide, you are called to protect, and you're called to preside. Now, most of these are in relation to like being a family man. So if you're a husband or a father, but primarily, like, it is not necessarily expected, and it depends on like the woman you end up being with and stuff, but you as a man should want to provide, meaning like be of use to those around you. Shia LaBeouf, on his Real Ones interview with John Bernthal, that podcast, talks about how like being happy isn't his purpose in life. He says his purpose in life is to be of use, to like have utility. And I think that's like super noble. I know some people are like, no, you gotta like be happy and find your joy. And like, yes, you need to learn to be a happy person, but purpose, like true great purpose in life, comes when it's not about you, when it's outside yourself. So providing for a wife and kids would like fulfill that part of being a man that's within us. I think like, I don't know. That's just, I think, very important. Protecting, I mean, this goes back into the like differences between men and women that need to be celebrated. Genetically and naturally, men are usually predisposed to building muscle more and being stronger and faster. And like, times aren't the same anymore, right? Where it's not like we're being hunted by lions in the wilderness, but there is a level of like protection and security you need to provide your family. And that's not necessarily like physical. Like, you need to create a space that is like a safe haven for your spouse, for your children, and for yourself. Like, as a man, you need to protect yourself. And then presiding, Presiding doesn't mean like you are a dictator. You're like a domineering leader and everyone needs to fear you. Presiding just means like having the mature capability to make decisions, to like think straight and communicate clearly expectations in a family setting with a spouse. And you do that together. Like you guys become joined together in marriage to make decisions as a family unit, but like lead the charge, like be a man, like, know how to make decisions. Like no woman's going to be upset that you know how to make decisions in a crunch or in a stressful situation. Like I think that's the narrative that's taught, is that like, oh, in traditional marriages, like the wife has no say. And it's like, no, if anything, the wife being home with like kids more and like seeing them on a more personal level probably than the husband, if anything, she'll have the biggest influence on like the decision making. But it's important the two of them come together to make those decisions, and that the husband like can initiate that and make stuff happen. So Jesus Christ is the perfect example of being a man. He was a male by gender. He, grew up learning how to work with his hands. He grew up becoming a great teacher, but ultimately he's the Son of God, right? But he was so empathetic. And I think empathy and sympathy and emotions are stereotypically shunned in the modern male narrative of what we should be. But Christ cried. Like Christ cried with those who were mourning. He mourned with those who were suffering. He was so quick to love and forgive. He was he was slow to anger. I think men are like traditionally hot-headed sometimes. I come from a family who can be hot-headed, cousins, brothers, myself. And so Christ like shows us you don't have to do that. Like you don't have to just give in to your like natural man emotion. Like you can breathe, you can relax, you can stay silent, you don't have to yell, you don't have to get in a fist fight with a guy who cuts you off on the freeway, which may or may not have ever happened in my family before, but like that's besides the point. So I'm just gonna rattle off some scriptures that show us like some characteristics of what men should be. So Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. So husbands, you need to love your wives. You need to give yourself completely and without reservation to your wives. So John chapter 13 verses 4 and 5 reads, he riseth from supper, Jesus, and laid aside his garments and took a towel and girded himself. After that he poureth water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel wherewith he was girded. And then jump over a few verses. Verse 16, he says, verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither he that is sent greater than he that sent him. Right? And right before that, he says, this is an example that you should do what I've done to you. So men, let's serve. Like, let's be servants. Let's be of use, right? Like, don't ever think you're greater than another person because of your status or your career or your net worth or what people think of you. Like, don't ever like let pride come into the equation. Ephesians 6 verse 4, and ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. So, fathers, you need to raise children righteously, right? Don't make them angry. Don't, rub off on them if you're an angry person. This is a good one. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 18. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. So today in the world, it's cool if you're a man and you sleep with many women, and that's not like an issue at all. And it is an issue. It's a huge issue. And it's totally wrong. And it like is degrading to yourself. It's degrading to women. Like there's no respect in that world whatsoever. And so this is probably like the greatest scripture in the Bible about just manhood. It's 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13. It says, "Watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong." However, this is the Hebrew translation. The Greek translation changes quit to behave. So basically it's saying, men, stand fast in the faith, behave like men, and be strong. So what is, behaving like a man? Well, it's everything we've discussed. It's loving and respecting women. It's honoring your parents. It's raising righteous children. It's being of use in the world, serving others, being humble, being slow to anger, being empathetic towards those around you, listening. The list goes on and on. And I know that might get overwhelming as a man. It doesn't mean you need to have all these things right now, but it's what we're working towards. It's what we should be striving to develop as Christian men. This is the masculinity that I think is needed in the world today. There's a lot of women currently promoting the independent nature, the I don't need no man. And I think there's a lot of men that promote the I don't need no woman, and that's not true. We need each other. Like men and women, let's stop pointing, the metaphorical gun at each other. Let's stop, dueling. Let's just respect our differences, celebrate them, and come together as a unit to raise awesome families. That's being a Christian man. So thank you. Appreciate you listening and hope this helps you. Bye.